You've built a great SaaS product, but that's only half the battle. You need to get clients onto your platform and paying for your services. In this video, I'm going to run through many tips and tricks on how to make your customer onboarding journey more inviting for your customers and how to make sure you convert those prospective clients into actual clients on your platform. I'm Matt Grace, Managing Director of Flying Donkey. Let's get into it. All right, before we dive into the tips, let's understand what is a customer onboarding journey. So you're out there, you've got a SaaS product in the market and you want to get clients onto your platform. What you're going to need to do is find those prospective clients and actually get them set up and working inside your platform. Now, depending how difficult and complex or how mature your product is, customer onboarding journey might be simply asking for an email and a name, or it could be many setup steps inside the platform to make sure the customer is going to get the most out of the system. A customer onboarding journey simply takes that prospective customer and makes them an actual customer on your platform. It sets up their accounts, their organizations, etc. And it makes sure that they're going to be able to get the most out of your SaaS product. If you make a customer onboarding journey too difficult, that prospective client may get your product and it may be the right product for them, but they simply can't get through those steps and get the product set up correctly for their use case. That's why creating a good customer onboarding journey is very important to make sure that all that money you're spending in the sales and marketing is converting that client into a paying customer. So why is an onboarding journey important? Well, I touched on this previously, but essentially, if you're not getting that client from that prospective state into your product and paying you money, there's really no point in advertising in the first place. Or in fact, there's really no point in building that SaaS product behind it. You've got to remember that while you know everything about your SaaS product, a prospective client doesn't know anything about it. So they really need to be handheld through that process of getting set up and configured and demoed that project so they know what they're going to get out of the product. If they rock up and there's no onboarding journey, they're simply just going to leave and exit at that point. That means you're going to lose all that work you've done to find the client and all the work you've done to build the SaaS product in the background. So having this onboarding journey at the start of that process, making sure that prospective client, when they come to your platform, is onboarded correctly and set up in your platform is really key. All right, let's jump into it. Here's some top tips to make your customer onboarding journey great for your SaaS product. Tip number one, only ask for the most necessary information. Make sure in your onboarding journey, you're only asking for the absolutely necessary information. An example of this is, do you really need your client's date of birth? Maybe it's good to have, or maybe it's helpful for you in the future, but right now, your main target is to get that client from that prospective state in and onto your platform. Asking only for the very necessary piece of information from your client is going to be critical to shorten down that onboarding journey time. And while my following points will assist you in making long onboard journeys more palatable for your clients, really, if you can make the journey shorter overall, you're going to get the best outcome for your onboarding journey. Alongside this, there's a lot of data protection and data privacy rules coming in. In Europe, there's a law called GDPR, which essentially stipulates that you should only ask your clients for the data you actually need to process, which comes hand in hand with this tip. So therefore, this is sort of a two-in-one tip. One, reducing the amount of data you want to get up front is going to make your onboarding journey easier to pallet by your client. And secondly, with incoming data protection and privacy rules, requesting that you only ask for information you're going to use means that you're already complying when that comes into effect here. All right, tip number two, use wizards and clean UX UI. An onboarding journey is always going to ask for numerous steps. So it's going to have to set up numerous pieces of information within your system, potentially static data or other fields. Putting all these fields onto a single page is simply going to overwhelm the user and they may just exit straight away. What you want to do here is break your form up into multiple pages and only show them to the user in step-by-step sequence. This is generally called a wizard and you'll see this very commonly in a lot of sites. It might say this is step 1 of 4 or you're 25% through this flow. And what that's showing the user is that it's breaking it down so they don't get overwhelmed with the amount of information they're going to need to provide. I mentioned in the first step, and that's about reducing the amount of data. So this is what you're trying to do, but on a single page at a time. So let's just say you've got 20 fields that you're trying to put onto a page. Maybe split them up into 5 elements at a time and make sure they're grouped nicely. Maybe the first page is asking for the user's details. And the second page might ask for other users that are going to be using the platform and if they get invited to the platform. So what you're really doing is making it so it's a simple, easy sequence that the user's not going to get overwhelmed with and simply exit the process. Again, you've got to remember the outcome here. What you want to do is get that prospective client from being prospective and onto your actual platform. So any roadblock in the way is going to be most important to try and move. Right, tip number 3, communicate via email. So users hit your site and they've started on your onboarding journey. If they complete the journey, the best thing you can do now is send them a welcome email. That welcome email can confirm that you have received their account and it's now set up and it's ready to go, as well as potentially some handy tips and tricks or some links to some videos or some help files. Email is sometimes a forgotten art these days, and it's important to know that everyone still has and reads email. So when you're on the onboarding journey, make sure you send them multiple emails. Not only the first one that I mentioned before, but ongoing ones after that. Maybe schedule your sequence to send one every 3, 5, and 8 days after that sign up to make sure and check in that they're going okay. Maybe send them out some tips and say, have you tried this in the platform? Or have you tried that? Or even best is to have someone personally reach out and say, if you need some assistance, please reach out and we'll help you. Email is a great medium to connect directly to your clients. And now you have some of their contact details as part of the onboarding flow. It's really important to keep in constant communication. At the same time, emails are majority now read on mobile phone devices. That means when you're developing these emails, make sure they are mobile ready. Make sure that the links and clicks and videos that you can go out from those are also mobile supported, because you don't want to have a poor experience from a user in an email because it may turn them away and not allow them to come back. I guess in a nutshell, the point to make here is make sure you over communicate with your clients and make sure they know that they're being cared for and they're being looked after and that you're really trying to get them set up on the platform. If you're really trying to solve their need and communicate with them, then they will be a paying client into the future. All right, tip number 4, use video and video walkthroughs. Video is really the medium of today. People don't mind reading articles, but they really are more attuned to watching videos. It's quicker and it's easier for them to consume, and they really think they get better information through a video. I'd highly recommend throughout this process that you add videos into your onboarding flow, and you also add videos into those emails that I mentioned in the previous point. Videos showing how to get through the onboarding process and also how to use your platform are really critical. And yes, while the videos can sometimes go out of date, it's going to be a really important investment in your SaaS product. Again, just think about all the time you spent on both sales and marketing to get the client and all the time you spent on developing the application. You've got to make sure that piece in the middle where you're connecting those prospective clients into actual paying customers is really taken care of. Video is an excellent medium for this. Tip number 5, have a dedicated support team. Now, inevitably, when a user signs up, they're going to have questions. Not every user will, but there definitely will be a portion of users who will have questions that you won't be able to cover in a simple onboarding flow, or they're going to get overwhelmed with all the information that you've sent them. So it's very important to have a dedicated support person. Now, in the beginning, that support person might not be a full FTE, so it might have to be carried by another person in the business for a portion of their time. But at the same time, you can help support them in a couple of ways. Firstly, you can make an FAQ section on the site and really try and keep these FAQs narrowed down. I have seen some FAQs on websites where they have hundreds and hundreds of FAQs. And while these are probably frequently asked questions, the users are really wanting the top 10 or 20 questions answered. At the same time, an AI chatbot might be something really good here to answer those really easy questions, but it's really important to have an option for a user to email or contact a support person. And then finally, as I mentioned in my email section, if you are reaching out to users, make sure someone's support personnel are sending out emails to your new clients asking them if there's a problem. Sometimes people aren't very forthcoming with asking for help, but if you offer your services, they may take them up on you. Having a dedicated support person is really important, and investing here is critical. Again, you don't want to lose that money you spent on marketing and that money you spent on development just because you can't get someone over that last 5% of the hump and get them onto your product. While longer term, you might spin out a larger support team, it's really going to be about rotating that position around within your existing team and making sure that onboarding clients and supporting them onto your product is a key part of your onboarding flow. Tip number 6, implement a simple and effective UI UX. I did touch on this in one of the earlier points, and it's probably one of the most obvious things you can do, but make sure your UI UX is up to standard and is really easy to use. You've got to remember, someone coming to your site is completely unknown to your product, has never seen it before, has no idea what's going on. You've got to make sure that the interface that they're working through is really obvious for them. Make use of wizards like I mentioned, skip buttons, next buttons, back. The text fields are laid out in such a way they're easy to input. You've got validations, and you're using different field types to make sure the data they're implementing and entering is correct. Again, you may have the best SaaS product in the world, but if a client can't get through the onboarding process, then they're not going to even use the product. You've got to make it inviting and appealing and easy to use, and a simple UI UX is really simple. I've made numerous videos on the trends in 2022 around these things, so worthwhile checking that out. But it's important to know that some of these things change, but at its core, it's about making sure that an unknown user can use your product in an easy way. All right, tip number 7, test your onboarding flow with users or potentially focus groups. All right, so you've built what you think is a really great customer onboarding journey. You've showed it internally to your team and everyone thinks it's great. The problem here is you're showing it to the wrong audience. What you really need to do is show it to people who have no idea about your product and no idea about your customer onboarding journey. You'll be surprised to know how much you take for granted that you know about your product and how much other people don't know anything about it. Simply put this in front of a focus group and say, please sign up to my website and see what happens. You'll be surprised they'll scroll straight past buttons or skip videos that you put hours and hours of work into. It's important to sit them down and talk to them and ask them, why did you scroll through this? Why did you miss this? Did you see this? What are you looking for? A focus group is really going to spin your attention onto the things that really matter and really put you in the shoes of your customer when they land on your website. They may get to page 2 or 3 of your wizard and then find a question that's just too hard to answer, or it's worded in a difficult way that you don't know how to do. Testing these focus groups is really important because you can actually see firsthand the struggles. Otherwise, users might just be coming onto your site and leaving, and you might not know why they're leaving. It may simply be a wording problem, or it may simply be a validation issue in your site. Testing with focus groups is a really key way to make sure that what you've built is important and going to work in the real world. Tip number 8, use data. This flows back into my previous point. So you're using focus groups, you're seeing this data firsthand. But after you've used the focus group and you put this out into the wild, there's going to be other things that trip you up through your onboarding journey. This is where you're really going to have to track and use data to work out where people are exiting the flow. There's numerous software packages out there that either show you heat maps of the site or even record sessions of users running through your site, as well as Google Analytics, which shows you when they exit the page. It's really critical to track this data around when a user lands on your site, which page they click to sign up or log in, and where in the onboarding journey they're dropping out. Let's take an example for a moment. Let's say you have an onboarding wizard that has 4 steps, and let's say all of your users are dropping out at the 2nd step. Is there something wrong with that page? Is there a UI UX issue? Is the page broken or has a bug? Or is there something confusing the users aren't knowing? If you didn't have the data, you wouldn't know it's that page they're dropping out on. And maybe you'd be thinking that your marketing's not working because people aren't converting. So you're looking in the wrong spot. And that's why it's really key to have these data points to know exactly what you're doing. Tracking your users all the way through that flow can mean you can backtrack and work out what's going on. What you got to do with this data is simply just keep improving. So if everyone's dropping out on the 2nd page, make a small tweak, deploy that to production and see if that changes it. If it helps, continue and tweak. And what you want to do is get into this feedback loop where you're improving each of the steps slowly and steadily and you're increasing your retention rate by 1 or 2% here or there. Over time, it really adds up and it can really build you a better onboarding journey. But the key thing here is you need the data to start with. So make sure when you deploy your application, you have data tracking embedded straight away, because lo and behold, you can't go back and grab extra data if you didn't track it when you started. So the top tip here is make sure you have data capture straight in your onboarding journey so you know how it's being used and where the issues are. All right, so that summarizes the 8 tips on how to make a great customer onboarding journey. I'm going to close off with one frequently asked question I get, and that is, how long should a customer onboarding journey take? Well, unfortunately, there's no simple answer to that question. A customer onboarding journey is going to take as long as it needs for you to get the information that you need to set up your client. As per the tips, if you make sure you've got a simple UI, you're using a wizard, and you're asking for the minimal amount of information, you're on the right track. Ideally, there's as little friction as possible to get that user from that prospective client status onto your platform. Or if you need to, try and split the onboarding journey up into multiple phases. So maybe there's an onboarding journey to get them on and they can use part of the platform. And there's another onboarding journey after that to use another part of the platform. There's no right answer as to exactly how long it should take. The main thing is you follow these tips and tricks and you'll have a better onboarding journey. At the same time, if you are tracking the data and using focus groups, you'll get that feedback loop. And that's really more important than anything. No matter what you put out, it's never going to be perfect first time. It's just really key that you look at what's happening and what it's working and improve on that going forward. If you've built a SaaS product that's really not getting traction in your customer onboarding and you'd like to chat a little bit more with me about it, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to have a 30-minute chat.